We are getting closer and closer to crunch time for fantasy football. And here at IDP Plus, of course, we're specializing in the defensive side of the ball. And we started something last week that I think you guys are going to like. If you were here last week, smash a like and subscribe. If you're new, I think you're in for a treat. Hopefully, we're going to be able to help you with your IDP start sit decisions, your roster decisions in general. Sit tight. In just a moment, we're going to get into some matchup intel for week 10 of the NFL season as it relates to IDP production. Welcome back to the IDP Plus channel. As always on this show, I'm your host, Axton Harding, and if you were here last week, you know what we're all about, but in case you're new, this is the Matchup Intel show. I plan to do my best to keep this going throughout the remainder of the season to be able to give you guys the most information to be able to make the smartest roster decisions for your fantasy football IDP teams and be smart managers in that respect. Now, what we're going to get into is what we've coined the term, you guys actually coined the term matchup intel. It's essentially just a statistical rolling average of the last 3 weeks of play and the statistical averages that NFL offenses are giving to each of the 5 true position IDP positions: defensive tackles, defensive ends, linebackers, corners, and safeties. I've got the top 10 matchups, even more if you want to take a screenshot for yourself and take a look at later. Feel free. I've got a matchup hub that I have my good friend here at IDP Plus, Richard Latham, pulls stats from various data sources, and I put it all together in a giant conglomeration of beauty, as I like to call it, because I'm referring to this each and every week. It helps me be able to kind of analyze some of the matchups that I use kind of to help set my rankings for the IDP rankings. In case you're keeping an eye on that, go ahead and tune into that later this week. But this is basically all of the statistical averages NFL offenses are giving up to each of the IDP positions on average over the last 3 weeks, and we're covering all 5 IDP positions. Now, we lay out some ground rules, as these statistical averages don't paint the picture for this week's matchup. It's not a one-to-one to say that New England's allowing the most defensive tackles the most tackles to the defensive tackle position, that they're going to keep doing it each and every week. This is just what they've given up over the last 3 weeks, so use your best judgment to apply the statistical averages that are on the table coming into the necessary matchup, and then also apply the level of intel to yourself as far as the averages of your players and what kind of players you have on your roster that you're determining whether to start or sit. Are they players who tend to overperform or have a consistent high floor and tend to perform no matter what the matchup? Or are they a high variance kind of player and it might be more of a risk to play them in a good matchup, or you might want to sit them in a bad matchup? Just kind of determine yourselves what kind of player that you're looking to start this week and compare that with a matchup that's on hand. Usually I'd like to think of these as kind of a bucket of stats on the table. It's up to you to determine how reliable your specific player is going to be able to go out and grab those stats on the table. Now, also consider the fact that teams go and play short runs of awful teams. They play short runs of great teams. So the last 3 weeks might be averages based on tough matchups, and they might fall into an easy matchup. Game script is going to matter a little bit here. So just kind of take into consideration whether or not it's going to be a back and forth affair. The team's evenly weighed, and this is going to be kind of a back and forth matchup. How tough is the defense and factors like that? What kind of game is this going to be? Is there high potential for a team to run away with this and leave the opposing defense with not a lot of opportunity and snaps in order to garner some of this IDP production on the table? You know, the matchup is going to matter too. And interdivisional matchups tend to be matchups that tend to be more back and forth affairs, where the teams are very familiar with one another and they kind of know each other's strengths and weaknesses. So they tend to go back and forth and try to exploit those weaknesses. So just consider those factors at play. Again, the stats you see here is not going to say that each and every week these averages are going to carry forward into the following week. It's just saying that your guys or the guys on these teams are going to fall into a particularly opportunistic position this week. And if that player is an exceedingly performing kind of player, then they might go out and grab more stats or be in a more lucrative opportunity should game script fall in their favor. And the ones that are unfavorable just have less opportunity to go out and grab. So the game and production is going to be a little bit harder for them to go out and get. Now, I know I've talked for about 5 minutes here off the top, and you haven't got a whole lot of stats. So let's stop jabbering, Axton, and jump right into the numbers. That's what you guys want to see. So let's go ahead and jump right into the numbers. I've already got it filtered here. We're going to start with the best defensive tackle matchups as it relates to tackle production for the position. So first here, I'll actually even lay it out at what you're looking at. On the far left is what we're looking at. We're looking at column A. It's going to be the team giving the offense giving up the stats to the opposing defense. The defense in these respective matchups, hence the players we want to target, the teams, players that we want to target in these respective matchups or avoid, are going to be found in column B. So all of your players in each of these cells in this column are going to be the players that we're going to want to target or avoid in these respective matchups. As you guys can see, I've already read it. I've already highlighted it in red and labeled the teams that are on bye week. We've got Dallas, KC, Tennessee, and the Cincinnati Bengals all on bye week this week, so you can pretty well avoid each of those red markers. But nonetheless, now that you guys kind of have an understanding of what you're looking at, again, these are all 3-week statistical averages, what offensives have given up over their last 3 games. I have factored in bye weeks, so you don't have to worry about that either. So let's jump right into it. In the top 10 defensive tackle matchups as it relates to tackle production, the players on these teams find themselves in a particularly opportunistic situation this week. So we're looking at Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensive tackles. We're looking at the New Orleans Saints, Cleveland Browns, San Francisco 49ers, Minnesota Vikings, Philadelphia Eagles, Seattle Seahawks, Pittsburgh Steelers, Chicago Bears, Buffalo Bills. And then if you want to throw in Green Bay Packers, their interior defensive line is looking at a healthy matchup for tackle production. And then if you want to go in and look at perhaps the bottom 10 matchups that maybe we want to try to avoid here, if you have any pivots for players on these teams that you might be starting this week, it might not be a bad idea to find a similar pivot if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, sometimes you got to roll out with your guys. And again, stud players, I'll remind you, like I did last week, your stud players that have a high floor production and you find yourselves leaving in lineups and you don't have to really worry about whether or not you're going to start or sit them each week because they just have a high consistent floor, are guys that you're not really going to be looking to sit on any given week just because they're in a poor matchup. They're players that are exceeding expectations week after week, and they're players that you can rely on. So your studs, you don't have to really go into too much nitty gritty with all the numbers and matchup stats. Foyo Luakon is gonna post good numbers each and every week. Your Jordan Brooks and guys like that are playing high snaps and have a high floor of production for IDP each week. Take a look at their history. What are they putting up? Are they averaging double-digit points and giving you a nice floor? You really haven't had to worry about them this year. Don't really overthink their matchup this week. If they find themselves in a poor matchup, sometimes you got to grit it out because it's better than taking a risk on a lower floor guy who has a lot higher variance and could very well fall on their face a lot easier than, say, one of your studs in a poor matchup who are more likely to exceed those expectations. So again, just another piece of the puzzle to kind of consider here. So let's look at big plays for defensive tackles as well. We're looking at Tampa Bay in also top of the tackles column. They also find themselves in the most lucrative big play opportunity. So your Vita Vea is going to be in a great spot this week as a defensive tackle for the Tampa Bay Bucks because New England's been giving up over the last 3 weeks the most production to defensive tackles as it relates to tackle and sack production. Just lends well to a lot of opportunity on the table for Tampa Bay interior defensive linemen. Then again, Cleveland Browns interior defensive line, Pittsburgh Steelers, Chicago Bears, Baltimore Ravens. We've got the New Orleans Saints, Miami Dolphins, Houston Texans, and Minnesota Vikings. They all top the list here as far as big play production goes to the defensive tackle position. So let's look at the bottom 10 stats just in case you guys want to maybe take some screenshots and know kind of what matchups we might be looking to avoid here this week. Just give you a quick look at that. And then also I've got pass deflections because on the defensive line, it's not uncommon for interior defensive lines to get their hands on some batted passes. So again, I didn't mention this off the top, but the greener the cell you see here, the better the matchup and the more ideal spot they find themselves in as it relates to that particular statistic. So you find if you see a lot of green in your particular matchup, you find themselves in a good opportunity. If you see a lot of red in these kind of columns, you're not looking at as much opportunity on the table. It's going to be a little bit harder to go get that production and put points up for your IDP team that week. It's not to say it can't happen. I've seen many a times already this year. Again, don't make the mistake of setting a stud for a dud just because of a particular matchup. It doesn't always work out like you think. So that's kind of why I put out the disclaimers there. But again, just kind of take a look and do your screenshots, whatever you might have to do here. So let's get rid of the big men in the trenches. If you guys get a look there at past deflections for your big men, we're going to hide these columns and we're going to look at defensive ends. So let's look at defensive ends, and we're going to do our filter here, and we're going to sort to tackles for defensive ends. These teams find their defensive ends in a particularly high floor matchup as it relates to tackle production. Tackle production is a lot more sticky than big plays or sack production. You guys will find that it's a lot easier for any IDP player to maintain a high tackle floor than it is for them to get tackles on get sacks on a regular basis. You're going to find a lot more players that are getting 3 to 5 tackles per game than you are guys who are going to get a sack every single week. So just bear that in mind. Tackles are a lot more stickier than your big plays. Some guys find a way to get production elsewhere, whether it mean batted passes, tackles behind the line of scrimmage for tackles for loss, interceptions. Some guys have a knack in the secondary. So, just again, kind of consider all these factors when you're looking to make your start sit decisions and waiver wire pickups. So let's talk about defensive end tackle production. Baltimore's given up the most tackles to defensive ends on average the last 3 weeks. So Minnesota Vikings defensive ends find themselves in a good tackle matchup. Green Bay Packers, Seattle Seahawks, Detroit Lions, Miami Dolphins, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Washington Commanders, New York Giants, New Orleans Saints, and the Steelers defensive ends find themselves in good tackle matchups. If you want to look here at the bottom few, we've got Carolina Panthers defensive ends, Baltimore and New England, all in pretty poor matchups. Again, studs can exceed expectations, so don't quite overthink too much these negative matchups. But if you're on the fence about something, sometimes this can help. So take your screenshots, whatever you might need to do to remember that for later. Now let's look at sacks for the defensive end. We'll go ahead and even hide this column no, we don't want to hide that column because if we got a good pair here, like Seattle Seahawks defensive ends find themselves in a pretty good, not the greenest column, but a pretty green cell here, and it's at the top for defensive end sack production allowed. So Seattle Seahawks defensive ends are in a tasty matchup this week. Tampa Bay defensive ends as well. Houston Texans, the Chicago Bears, Baltimore Ravens, the Chargers, Vikings, Lions, Browns, Jets, and Atlanta Falcons kind of make up the top part of the more desirable matchups relating to defensive end sack production over the last few weeks. Minnesota Vikings finding themselves in a pretty good matchup here, as you guys can see, where they're amidst the top 8 in sack matchups over the last 3 weeks, and then they'll also find themselves in the best tackle matchup, best matchup for tackle production as well for the week, because you see that's the greenest cell there in that column as well. So we can take a look here, and you guys can get the bottom end matchups. San Fran, Philly, Miami, Buffalo, Arizona, and New York are kind of at the bottom of the barrel for sack production, as the offenses they're facing this week tend to be pretty stingy in that area. And then you also, again, we've got pass deflections here as well. Looks like at the top we don't have a whole lot for big play opportunity for pass deflections, but again, actually Detroit Lions kind of have some extra big play opportunity there, and not a bad tackle matchup either. So just kind of pair the more green the better, and the more red the worse kind of thing. So kind of easy for you guys to follow, I'm hoping, because it makes this a lot easier for me as well. So enough of the big guys in the trenches. Let's talk about the position everybody loves the most, and let's get to the linebacker production here. So we're going to hide those columns. We're going to filter our linebacker tackles to the most to the worst. And at the top, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Foye Oluokun, likely to be my #1 linebacker this week in the rankings. Go ahead and give you that little tidbit there. elite player in the best matchup possible, he's going to be gobbling up tackles all game long. Not to mention he just got that nose for the football. And even in the poor matchups, Foye Lucon's going out and getting 9 to 10 tackles a week. So Jacksonville Jaguars linebackers, the Lions linebackers, Minnesota Vikings, Giants, Washington Commanders, Buffalo Bills, Pittsburgh Steelers, Giants, Miami, and the Houston Texans kind of make up the top 11. Chicago Bears fall in right behind. Those are the teams that are playing offenses allowing 17 and 2/3 or more tackles per game. Again, Jacksonville, Detroit, and Minnesota heading the charge there in teams that are playing this week. So there's the tackle production. Then if you want to kind of peek it over to the sacks and big plays as well, we can kind of look over to these columns too. I'm not going to quite filter because linebacker tackles aren't quite, or linebacker sacks aren't quite as sticky, near as sticky as defensive ends. Defensive ends can kind of, they're often more around the quarterback a lot more, so they have the linebackers kind of have to be of a certain breed to be involved in the pass rush. It's kind of more of a situational kind of thing. But something I think you guys are going to like, and another guy who's probably going to find himself in the top 12 of my rankings this week. Let's look here at the Detroit Lions matchup. Jack Campbell has a sack in like the last 3 or 4 straight games. He finds himself in a matchup that's top 3 in tackle production. He also finds himself in a matchup where the opposing offense has given up 1 sack per game on average over the last 3 weeks, specifically to the linebacker position. That means Jaden Daniels has been sacked by 3 linebackers. Could be the same one multiple times. Nonetheless, he's got 3 sacks to the linebacker position. Jack Campbell is involved in the pass rush game. There's a lot of big play opportunity. If you even look at the interceptions, the Washington Commanders having given up 1/3 of an interception over the last 3 weeks simply just means they've given up 1 interception to the linebacker position in the last 3 weeks. So lots of big plays on the table for Jack Campbell and Detroit linebackers. I love that matchup here this week. Then also on the other side of the ball as well, Washington Commanders, Frankie Louvu might have more opportunity to get that sack this week as he is the linebacker for Washington, more involved in the pass rush game. Not to say that Bobby Wagner couldn't get back there and land a sack. I believe he already has this year a time or two. Just that's probably going to be the priority. Frankie Louvu finds himself on more pass rush snaps. It's got to be special packages for Bobby Wagner to get back there, but it can happen. So again, just kind of check out the big play opportunity here. Jacksonville linebackers find themselves in pretty good coverage opportunity for big plays. Then down here, we've got the kind of more poor matchups where there's not as many tackles on the table down here. But you might find some opportunity for big plays out there if you can find it. But again, these would be matchups that if we can, we would try to avoid. But again, we're not going to sit stud players for bench players just because they found themselves in a worse matchup than one of your bench guys. So start your studs, sit your duds, and don't overthink that part of the game. Fantasy football is supposed to be fun. You got to play your good guys. So you guys have kind of seen that. I'll go ahead and quickly filter to the sacks if you guys want to see that for linebacker sack production. Green Bay Packers, Lions, Washington Commanders, Texans, Dolphins, New England, Ravens, Panthers, Seattle, Cleveland, and Jacksonville, all in the big play category here this week. So now let's get into the defensive backs. This is kind of couple of the tougher positions to kind of get a handle on. They're the more volatile positions where players are more up and down. It's hard to find some consistency, but you can always end up finding streamers or good matchups. So let's look at the tackle matchups for cornerbacks this week. We've got Vegas cornerbacks, the Bucks, Miami, the Falcons, Broncos, Giants, Ravens, Jaguars, Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Buffalo Bills this week head the charge for teams whose cornerbacks found themselves in a good tackle matchup, or at least the better tackle matchups in Week 10. Then if you look over here as well in the next few columns, we've got the Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills and the Colts giving up 2 sacks to opposing cornerbacks in the last 3 weeks. That's pretty good. 2 out of 3 games they've given up a sack to the position. So the corners for these particular teams, Miami and Atlanta, find themselves in some big play opportunity. They've also got 3 pass deflections, or over 3 pass deflections kind of on the table there as well for some added big play upside. So some pretty good, particularly tasty matchups here for Miami, Atlanta, and Baltimore cornerbacks. Baltimore not as much in the sack opportunity, but more in the big play for pass deflections. Then if you look, well, Dallas is on bye this week. So yeah, just kind of take a look there. We'll even filter to the pass deflections. You guys want to take a quick screenshot and see what teams kind of have a good combo with pass deflection opportunity. And I can do interceptions. It's just going to be pretty vanilla here, where there's, interceptions kind of a little more few and far between. So now that we've seen the cornerbacks, let's get to the safeties and round out the show. All right, safety tackle production. We're going to filter here to safety tackles allowed, where we find Houston safeties, Jalen Petrie in a good tackle matchup, Los Angeles Rams, Quentin Lake, Cameron Curl, good guys that play deep, or not play deep, excuse me, good guys in the secondary that are in good opportunities, high floor guys. San Francisco, Washington, Jacksonville, Green Bay, New Orleans Saints, the Giants, the Steelers, and the Vikings, all kind of heading the charge here in the more favorable matchups for safety production. Now, if you look over one more column, you can kind of pair that with some big play opportunity. You got the Jacksonville Jaguars safeties kind of have a little bit extra opportunity for pass deflections. Same with Houston Texans. Jalen Petrie might be able to get his hands on a ball or two in coverage as well. Then also there's an interception opportunity here. So just kind of pair some of these things. It's kind of fun to just screenshot and just take a look at the numbers. If you want to avoid, take a look at some lesser end matchups with teams that don't necessarily pass the ball around as much or don't give up as much production to the safety position, you can find them there. I'm not going to filter the big play stuff for safeties. It's pretty tough to gauge big plays. It's very special instances where they're getting sacks. Pass deflections are not sticky whatsoever. You're just going to find more pass deflections in your more pass-happy matchup. So if you guys even just want it, I'll give you an opportunity there for a quick screenshot if you so choose. Interceptions as well, something that doesn't happen near as often. It's going to be a little bit more vanilla, but there's that. So I hope you guys find any value with this. I love the comments. I almost find that just as much fun, if not more fun, than doing the actual show itself. Getting in the comments with you and chatting, conversing, talking about football or your particular matchups, the guys you're targeting or avoiding, or just have questions on. I'm always willing to lend my opinion. Again, you can find me on Twitter at AxemanIDP. I don't always post my own thoughts all the time, but I'm always retweeting good stuff that I think could be useful to my viewers or people who just play IDP Fantasy Football. I'm always trying to just help where I can. So if I can share valuable information or information I find valuable to myself, I will always be doing that. Again, follow me there at AxemanIDP. Feel free to DM me on Twitter. I talk with several people already. Feel free to reach out to me there, and we can kind of have some back and forth as to kind of some decisions you might be making around your IDP teams. But again, if you guys like what you see, go ahead and throw it in the comments. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, what you like to see more of, throw down your roster questions, whatever you might have. Just let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss another video that comes out this week, and check out the rest of the channel. Highly recommend Sebastian Fearon at DDGendoc on Twitter. Follow him. He's got a great injury report that he puts out every day of the week. It's been insanely valuable to me. So highly suggest that among all of the other content we have. A lot of the guys from the Big Guys FS channel put out some great content as well. Go check out some of the other videos that we have. But until next time, I'll see you guys later this week with the IDP ranking show. So give me a little bit of grace there. I'll be crafting and putting things together to put that out later this week. But I wanted to get the matchup intel out to you guys as soon as possible. So until next time, guys, good luck this week, and we'll see you back in the next video.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.